So where did Tyler go?
We should have pulled out first.
You want them to carry it?
Yeah. Oh, he's there. Oh, cool. All right.
So they have, and they're not coming back, and they've made it clear they're not coming back in that document.
Vicky, we might start today, Vic, if that's okay.
Oh, that's subtle.
Right, okay. Welcome everybody. So if we might start, we'll start with the karakia.
We all look at Tyler.
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hia ake ana te atukura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so we have, welcome everybody. We've got James and Sarah on Zoom. And we've got an apology for lateness from Mayor Phil Major. I'm happy to move that. Pauline's happy to second it. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 2, declarations of interest. So there's just a couple there. Pauline on the foundation, Mark on the Rickett and Bush Trust, and myself and Sarah on a couple of the CCHL items, and Councillor Kewen around a funding application in public excluded later on today. Is there anything else we need to be aware of? Perfect. Okay. The previous minutes, I'm happy to move them. Mark's happy to second them. Anything anyone wants to raise? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. The resolution to include the supplementary reports. Again, I'm happy to move them. Melanie's happy to second them. Any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. David, we don't have any public forum, do we? No. We don't have any deputations. Okay, just for anyone watching online and for the media, what we're going to do now is move into public excluded for, I suspect, maybe 20 minutes. We've just got Mary Devine and Abby Foot here to discuss some CCHL things. So if we could have your staff and anyone that isn't here that isn't relevant to the item leave, that would be useful. And we'll have a resolution to keep Mary and Abby here. So I'm happy to move that. Tim's happy to second it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. for something a bit more lighthearted, Peter, do you want to talk us through the key organisational performance report?
Am I going to live up to that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can live up to it because this is so steady that there's actually not a great deal to report. Levels of service, watch list capital projects, OPEX financials all on track and very steady with last month. In fact, the last 3 to 4 months. So the results you see there in front of you are actually probably pretty indicative of what you'll get for year end. There may be a little volatility towards year end as some of the audit results come in, but by and large, I would expect that what you're seeing there is how we'll finish the year. Some of the non-key projects remain off track, and that's obviously having an effect on the overall budget spend. Otherwise, organisational performance results pretty steady. So there it is in 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Now, just to note, we've got 2 additional, I think, the attachments.
We do. Because that is an automated product and the 2 systems were not talking to each other very well, there is an amended diagram that is more accurate. It doesn't show any difference from previous months, the corrected version. Now that we understand how the automation glitch works, I don't expect that one will be repeated.
Great. No problem. Does anyone have any questions for Peter? Noting we've got detailed reports coming next as well. Yanni.
Just on page 26, appreciate the work that's gone in, but in terms of the response, in terms of percentage of real water loss from council's water supply reticulated network, the comments are actually really hard to understand. I was just wondering if someone could explain. All leaks reported under the water loss contract have not been repaired by the maintenance contractor, thus resulting to no secondary tests for candidate zones. Most results for candidate zones are higher than previous results. I have absolutely zero idea what that means. Can someone just put it in simple English to understand what's happening around fixing the water leaks?
I can't translate that for you. It's too technical. But perhaps Brent can.
Yeah, Brent might be able to add something.
And I might have to get some interpretation of it as well for you,
I'm happy
councillor.
just to get a memo. Yeah. I know in the past around water leaks, staff have actually sent through a really good memo that shows the response times to the complaints and the backlog of leaks. And I'm just, I guess, really keen to understand.
We'll get an update on that previous work, and there's a lot of different things affecting the leaks in terms of the state of the pipes and the workload for the contractors. So I'll get an update out to you.
Yeah, and can it be in simple English? Like, easy to understand.
More words.
No, stop. No.
That's okay. We'll do that because the reasons for it are quite technical in some areas, so we'll get that done and a lot easier to understand.
Okay, thanks.
Tyler.
Kia ora. Actually, for the water team too. Just on that, I just want to take this offline, but I've just got a question to see if you're able to tell me the process around the leakages and how fast they get addressed. We had an issue on Main South Road that lasted for 5 months before it got action, so I was just a little bit worried about that. So if we can get a process, that'd be great.
I can contact you offline.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
I was just going to say that actually relates to the test that we're running at Rafiti zone that's reducing the pressure, which actually has an effect on reducing the leakage. So we're obviously looking for another zone. And my question was around the exemption that we've lodged with Taumata Ottawa in September 22nd. Have we got any idea of when we might hear anything back from them? It's a long time.
We have checked again last week. We still haven't heard, but you'll be the first to know when we get it in. We haven't had a response back yet.
Right, and just looking at also on page 26, our water consumption is still not down to the target of 215 litres a day per resident. We're still at 267, and stating that the excess charges are expected to help that. But moving into the wet season now, would it be logical to expect that we would need that to run through the following demand season over the Christmas period to get a really good picture of whether that's going to work or not?
Yeah, you'd be correct. I mean, any stats you look at are better over a longer period of time. The obviously the higher water uses during the summer periods, but we would expect it to be dropping through the winter anyway, and we'll be able to present those figures back to council when we get it over the 12 months.
Great, thank you. And also just noting on page 31, the cycling counts are pretty good. They're coming up pretty close to what the target is, at 11,272 a day with a target of 12,500. And that's trending up. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Yanni?
Just in regards to the footpath assessment, like we obviously don't know the condition of our footpaths, and you're working through with the university, and you're talking about having like bespoke buggies and things. Are you talking to New Zealand Post who actually go through most of our roads? So rather than having a separate person go out, is that something that you've considered? Or I thought we were going to get, because other people have raised also previously things like rubbish trucks that go to every street. So is it possible just to get a sense of, again, like a memo or just a response, would not today would be fine, but what we're looking at in terms of those options? Because I was just concerned to think that there's other people that do go on our footpaths, like the postal service, that may be a more cost-effective way.
So I can tell you that today that staff are looking at all the options out there, all of the organisations that we could partner with, and when we have a solution and we have gone through that, we will come back and let you know where we're going.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Tim looks like he's wanting to move this, and I think Tyler's happy to second it. Any discussion? All in favour? Against? It's carried. Thank you. Great. Thank you, Peter.
Cheers.
Russell, do you want to come up and run through your one, financial performance report?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning, councillors. So, this is the financial report for February, and it reports that there was a surplus of $7.3 million for February. And that's the big numbers are that it was $8.6 million ahead of budget in revenues, and $1.3 million ahead of budget, higher than budget in expenditure. The main drivers for that are not inconsistent with previous reports that are brought to council. Higher interest revenues, higher transwaste dividend coming through, rates revenues, so that's the growth component coming through, higher than expected. Waka Kotahi subsidies, mainly around emergency maintenance costs that we've got subsidies for, higher Eco Central volume received, offset by resource consents. That's mainly because discounts have been given because the statutory time frame hasn't not met, but I can report that that position is improving, and we're getting closer to time frames. And Burwood landfill revenues were down. On the expenditure side, higher debt servicing costs, so that's offsetting the higher interest revenues that we've got. Lower capitalisation of staff, and I'll come back to that one in a minute. And we have Crown funding from the water transition expenditure, so we've budgeted, but that hadn't been fully expended at that point. And grants and levies, about $2.4 million that had been unspent or below budget as at the end of February. So last month when we were here, we were reporting a forecasted deficit of $1.4 million. The forecast deficit in this report is a surplus of $0.2 million, so quite a move. And I'll say, although it is $0.2, and I'll come to some of the reasons for that, but I just reiterate that it's, as set out in the paper, that's it's a whisper thin surplus with a expenditure of $675 million to be there, and any adverse events, risks, where we all sit. So we're monitoring that closely, but there is still some risk that where that'll end up. So some of the reasons for the deficit, projected deficit last month, still remain now, and the biggest one would be in the capitalisation of staff time. So significant work is happening in that space to look at that and see why that is, and some things have been uncovered, perhaps the way we've been doing it and capturing the correct time for operational time versus capitalisation time. So there's been some improvement there, and now we're going back and saying, okay, the things that we have uncovered at this point, can they have they had an impact in the past? So work is happening in that space. Also, we've had in some areas there's been significant amounts of leave going through. That's skewed the mix between capitalisation of staff. We've also looked at where there has been underspends in the budget predominantly, and just shoring up some of that's. Will that still be there at year end? And the closer we get to year end, the more certain we are on those numbers. And so, there's vacancies in there in other resourcing matters which we can say, no, that isn't going to be filled by year end. So we've been able to capture that. So that's the reason for the move. And as I said, it is still quite a thin margin. So it's we're still going hard with the business and budget managers to shore up those areas where that there could be possible surpluses that we can actually bake in now rather than wait till end of June. So I do have a verbal update on Treasury, but I'll take any questions on this part before I move to that, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. I can keep going? Yeah, good as gold. So sort of deviating from the paper a wee bit. Ideally, the group treasurer, Steve Ballard, would have been here, but Steve's tied up with a bond issue at Orion, so he can't be. And we thought it was pertinent just to bring, I guess, an update in the treasury space with recent world events and the impact that it's having here. And so there has been some, I guess, murmurs. Okay, it's GFC all over again because of Silicon Valley and what's happening in Switzerland. So we can say that's categorically not the case. The Silicon Valley Bank was bad interest rate risk. So they took the gamble during COVID that the long-term interest rates would stay low, and that hasn't materialised. And so depositors have withdrew their funds looking for better returns. So as Steve has put in his notes to me, the old-fashioned bank run situation. And Credit Suisse situation, so that bank had been making some high-profile loss-making deals in the past couple of years, and so the situation was compounded by the bank's largest shareholders saying that they weren't going to provide any more capital. So that's the situation there. So other banks have similar stresses, especially second-tier US banks, where some of the regulations were relaxed. But just to reiterate, this isn't a system-wide exposure like the bad debts and the subprime mortgages in the US that led to the GFC. So it's specific things. So the space of central banks, so they're responding as they should. It's a managed workout for troubled banks to avoid risk spreading to good banks. So it's not a bailout, okay? So we might hear that word. It's not a bailout. Shareholders will lose their investments, but central banks are just looking to minimise the contagion spreading to other banks. But with that risk, there's uncertainty, and that makes the market cautious. So there's the move to flight good quality stocks like government bonds and the like. So government bonds and gold have gone up in value as the demand has increased. So credit risks, so credit spreads, so that's the margin that's paid by borrowers to compensate from risk, that's widened, so we're paying more for borrowing funds. So this is likely to slow the economy as banks respond by tightening credit, so it's going to be harder and more expensive to borrow. So where does that sit with inflation? So the thinking is that it'll could come down slightly without interest rates going up much higher. So we're waiting to see what happens in that space. So the implications for us at Council, so we have a very prudent funding and interest rate management to smooth the impacts through on us. So although the market might go up and down, and it's moved, what have we got here, 2.8% more than the last annual plan, but the impact from us was 0.9. So because of the way we I guess, use the derivatives and hedge our funds, the impact is less. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
That's really, really useful, and it gives a good context of what's sort of ahead. I know in Australia at the moment, well, they're speculating this morning that in Australia they're not looking at increasing the OCR next week. So you sort of think maybe things are about to change given the economic environment we're going into. So we'll start with Yanni, and then if anyone else got questions.
Just one very specific question and then one sort of general question. The Hepuna Taimoana, it's got listed as one of the reasons for the forecast in terms of revenue, but it's got the same quantum as the forecast in the yield to date. So I just wondered, it's just is that just a typo, or is there that we expected it? It's just on page 35. But anyway, I'm happy to get...
No, that's a great question, and thanks for asking it, because often those numbers are changed from one column to the other. What's that saying is that at the year to date, the position is $500,000 moved from budget, and we're saying that at year end it's going to be $500,000 to budget. So that means it's not going to be changing between now and year end. That's what that means.
Right.
Often the numbers are changing because the position will change from now, but in that instance, so we're not expecting a change.
So at the end of the year, we'll see what that difference was in terms of the...
Well, at this stage, we're flagging that to be $500,000 move. Yep.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm just confused why it's on the list then if it's no change.
Well, no. Okay, these aren't the changes from one to the other. These are the two columns. One saying the position that's for year to date, what's impacted that, and the next column is saying the position that impacts the forecast. Okay, move from budget. Right. Yeah.
Just a high level question. I don't know if it's part of the Treasury report. If it's not, I'd be kind of keen to know when we do get a chance to understand it. But the revaluations would have had a significant impact on our budget, or in terms of our they must have had a significant impact. Where do we get visibility?
In what respect?
Well, we'd be paying more rates
on our buildings,
and on our assets.
I asked the question because the public we're watching, and just so they differentiate.
Just trying to understand when we understand the consequence of that. And I know the objection period has closed, and I wondered if we'd put any objections in on any of our assets, given I think previously when we were briefed, it did show a very huge increase in value. But if today's not the right place, or this report's not the right place to ask that, I'm happy to.
But you'll, and sorry, cut me off if I'm going off tangent, but you'll kind of get the way that if the values are going up, as long as they're going up around the city, it sort of moves at the same rate.
Yeah, so that obviously there's the revaluation process, and people all got letters. This is the revaluation.
Yeah.
There was an objection period. So the two questions are: one is when do we get the visibility of what that revaluation means in terms of the rates increase for our budget? And then the second question is: did we object to any of the revaluations?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that I can answer the second part. In fact, I know I can't. I'm not sure what objections we put into buildings or assets that we own that went up in the valuation. But so far as the impact goes, that was part of the annual plan discussion. And you may recall we showed, the rates, particularly to ECAN, because of the value increase in our particularly our water networks. That was sort of a bit circular, but it did resolve in a higher rate, higher margin that we'll be paying through to ECAN. So that was one of the factors that we led to the rates calculations. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions on this? Leah, did you have anything you want to add?
No, I think Russell covered it.
Yeah, fantastic. No, thank you very much. And I really appreciated the work you've done in terms of sort of the situation we're in last month as opposed to this. It explained it really, really clearly to anyone reading it. So, yeah, appreciate your work.
Cool. Okay,
Great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm happy to move that. Kelly's happy to second it. Any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Great, thank you. Andrew, do you want to run us through capital? And I'm sure you're going to preempt all my questions.
I have a clue what they were. No, I'll try to, if you'd like me to. Kia ora koutou, katoa. So I've just got a few key points I want to highlight from the report. Firstly, I'd like to start with some positive news. and just some project successes are recognised over the last month. I think a couple worth mentioning are the ones associated with Sail GP, the work associated around the Naval Point project and the Godley Key roading project. I think a few months ago, looking at some of the targets and achievements required there were some pretty demanding requirements, and they were met really well. So congratulations to those teams, and good to see the Performing Arts project getting underway with some concrete pours in the last month to see some really good progress in those areas. So just sort of call those ones out. In terms of the trends across the program, you can see that Three Waters program's gently trending upwards in terms of their project managers' accumulated forecasts. That's probably countered by transport gently trending downwards. So that leads us to say, from a program level perspective in the PMO, we want to hold our line on the forecast finish for core infrastructure of $390 million, Sam. We do a lot of analysis behind that. We look at the actuals year to date and the trend lines. We look at the forecasts from the project managers and those trend lines, and we have a pretty good idea of where those things sort of intercept. So the PMO's forecast across the total program, with all things taken into account, we'd be still forecasting that 390 million year-end position. And I suppose that sort of leads on to talking about the carry forward process, and just to remind you of what goes on there. So with that 390, obviously the obvious thing to sort of conclude there is, well, what do you do with the carry forward money when compared to the budget of, it's around about 470, I think it is off the top of my head. So you've heard through our briefings that we target a net zero carry forward through the year-end process. We're still doing that. We're still looking for that. It takes into account bringbacks. That's money spent ahead of budget. Bringbacks and carry forward. So in the bringback space, for example, we've brought some budgets back already from the future years to get things done quicker this year to help with deliverability. Some examples of those sorts of projects are ones like Diamond Harbour, Naval Point, Ngāpunawai Car Park. It's a few of the cycleways, some wastewater renewals, Eastern Terrace water supply. Those are projects that have been delivered well this year that have used budgets from future years. So it creates a hole in the future years. So already you've got some space to put some carry forwards into that place, and the carry forward process looks at, it doesn't just dump everything on the immediate next year. It looks at whether there's project budgets in that year and beyond for any given project, and places the carry forward in the most sensible place. So it doesn't all go into FY24. It goes into wherever that project is phased, and it may go at the end of the project depending on what its progress is. So there's a bit of complexity and quite a bit of analysis goes on around that. So as we've always said, we'll target net zero, and there's all sorts of moving parts with bringbacks, carry forwards, project phasing, and things changing. And I guess that is the advantage of having a sort of a program management type approach. Look at the deliverability, gives you that kind of flexibility to balance budgets and smooth things out across the total program, rather than being constrained by accountants' financial year beginnings and ends. So we'll continue to monitor that and look at how we can achieve that objective. Two other quick things just to say before any questions. We've highlighted the emerging risk of the after effects of Cyclone Gabriel. It is quite difficult to determine what impact it have on the market here, particularly in Canterbury. If anything, it's probably unlikely to ease any of the inflationary pressures that we currently experience. But in terms of resourcing, still to be determined, but my view is it won't have a great impact on our resources, provided we continue to engage well with the suppliers in the market and keep the work coming up to them. That allows suppliers to resource appropriately and balance their workloads. And just in terms of sort of context, some of the estimates around Gabriel recovery are getting quite high, into the billions of dollars. That's not all public sector, but a private sector stuff through insurance. Some estimates I've seen recently are in the order of $4 to $8 billion. For a bit of comparison, the Kaikoura earthquake Nectar project was about 1.4 billion. Skirt a few years back was 2.2 billion. So in terms of scale, it's potentially a pretty big deal up there in terms of recovery from Cyclone Gabriel. So we'll continue to watch that and just see what sort of impact it has on our market here. But the important thing is we keep talking to our suppliers and keep a consistency of workload coming up to them. Which leads me to my last point in terms of industry engagement. As you know, the draft annual plan's out in the community. As part of that, you probably will have seen the interactive budget tool, the bubble diagrams, that helps suppliers sort of get a bit of a handle on what we're doing going forward. We also supply some information to Te Waihanga, the New Zealand Infrastructure Commission, to inform their national pipeline. So the data that we have from the draft annual plan is fed into Te Waihanga. That sits alongside every major asset owner's data that they publish. So it gives industry and New Zealand Inc., I suppose, a good perspective on what's coming up in the future. We've actually had some really good feedback from them recently about the quality of the data that we've provided to them. We do that on a quarterly basis, so it was nice to get that feedback that we're providing them with some really good, accurate information. And over the coming month or two, we're going to start our supplier engagement sessions on the back of the draft annual plan to talk with contractors and consultants about the workload ahead. We do industry briefings a couple of times a year. This time we're going to talk to individual service areas, and I've been talking with the heads of service areas and procurement about our approach there. So we'll be a bit more targeted this time and talk to the three orders consultants and contractor panelists, and then we'll go to the transport area and parks and rec as well. We'll do them so it's kind of more work for us, but we'll get a better quality conversation and engagement with those individual sector areas rather than doing a big sort of broadcast. So a bit of work ahead of us there to keep the suppliers close with our intentions and plans over the next year and beyond.
Thank you very much. And it'll be no surprise, I want to understand, I know you've covered it, the 390, right? Because in my mind, I'm just looking at, it's literally page 2, where we've got the projections for the year, and we've got the remaining to hit the target, right? And there's probably two questions in it. When was the last time the 390 was revised? Like, have we held that, looking back at the papers, it looks like it was certainly pre-election, maybe August, September?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We made that assessment back then, and we look at it every month.
Yep.
We look at the spend and the forecasts, and we've held that line since that time.
Right.
But it's not to say, we're not looking at it. We look at it monthly and strike that position. So we've been consistent in our assessment of that.
So I guess the logic test, just in really, really simple terms, I'm looking at that on page 2, the graph the table that's got forecast, actual, and percentage, right? And so we've held that number, that the sort of the monthly cash flow at that rate. So it hasn't changed for that time, but we haven't actually achieved the forecast within that for that time. So what I'm trying to work out is, if we haven't been achieving the milestones from when that number was revised, how's that number credible now in terms of us getting to the end of the year and having to pump more in when we haven't actually hit our targets along the way? Does that make sense?
Not entirely, no.
Okay, well let me phrase it. I'll put it even more. And sorry, I do overcomplicate things, but effectively what I'm saying is, if the number hasn't changed since, say, August, September last year, but we haven't been hitting the milestones from that point till now, what gives us confidence that from now till the end of the year we will do above and beyond to get to the 390?
Okay, so the important thing to understand is there's two approaches to the forecast. The 130 odd project managers that run 1,000 odd projects all do a forecast on their individual project.
Yep.
That's the yellow bars in the report.
Right.
So they make an assessment of where they're going to spend their money by an individual project, and that accumulates to the 428.7 million.
Right.
That's if you just, with all their assessments and individual knowledge, optimism bias, negativity, whatever it is, that's their opinion. We step back at a program level and go, with unders and overs, with year-to-date spend rates, extrapolating them with year-to-date forecasts, which trend generally downwards, they eventually meet at a point. So we do analysis across each of the service areas and then roll them up, and we get to 390. And we look at previous year's performance as well as this year's performance. So we've got a pretty good data set and a pretty good feel. It's not to say they're all wrong. It's just a different perspective on the assessment of the total program spend.
Perhaps to put it a different way, which graph, again, I'm taking it in the public visibility, people looking at it, which graph should I be looking at which points out your monthly forecast versus the capital spend? Which one is that shows me that your forecast at the 390 is hitting its stride the whole way through?
The one at the bottom of page 2 is the aggregated project manager's forecast. That's the data that we get out of the project management system.
Yeah, but aren't you saying you don't agree with that data?
We have a different assessment of it. Yeah,
so where is you? So perhaps put a different way. And
I haven't got those workings in this paper, but I
because what I want to see, and maybe it's something that the team need to take offline is it's great the project managers are feeding it through, but actually from the PMO office point of view, I want to get your assessment of actually the 390 forecast and how we're tracking against that.
I can have a discussion with you separately about that, or we can include it in the paper if you wish.
It would be useful because the project managers, they're doing a fantastic job, but actually to me, I kind of want your assessment of their work fed into a report. So is that something you guys can take offline and feed through to the next one?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Got it.
Aaron.
Just to follow up on that, like when the public look at that, they'd go, why, when the weather's so crap in June, do you spend the most money? And it's over double most months spend. And Sam's point that other than November, the green's always behind, and then it's cumulative when it's 5 odd million a month that it's behind. And then, so that obviously the green bar in June's miles bigger than the yellow bar, which is always miles bigger than everything else. But why does it happen like that? Just a simple layman's term.
This is a bit of accounting. Russell might help me with this one. Basically, it's a year-end process where the accruals that go in June also pick up some of the July accounts as well. So it's a year-end adjustment, which is why it forecasts up higher than other months. It generally, if you look at July, the first month is really low.
Yeah.
So it kind of all
balances out.
But it's an accounting adjustment at year end with the accruals that get put into June. So oftentimes it's talked about as a double month, but it doesn't usually get to double. But it usually gets more than 100% of what an average month would be.
So
because
it's
of that year-end adjustment.
Not double the amount of work done, just double the amount of bills paid.
Double accounting, yeah.
Right.
Double the amount of bills paid in that period. Yeah. Anything to add on that?
It's like the government budgets, get it all in before year end. Celeste.
Thanks, Andrew. 'Cause the work is rolling, so we do a tighter month end as possible each month, but there's going to be stuff that's ongoing. So I guess what we're saying here is June, because it's year end, there's more vigilance around that period to make sure that everything that's done in June that can be booked in June is booked in June. So there'll be some extra go in. That's we'll have a look at that. Yeah.
Great. Celeste.
Just looking at paragraph 3.5 around the three waters forecast, I see it's tracking really well with 89% of the budget being delivered. Do you foresee, like you do with some other projects, some bringbacks or do further delivery of some of those individual projects?
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of them before, so there has been bringbacks. Yeah, some of the wastewater renewal programs definitely have bringbacks. And what was that other one? Eastern Terrace water supply. Yeah, so it's the program allows that flexibility.
That's
so
great.
there's always bringbacks and carry forwards.
And I'm aware that there was a few consenting challenges as they work through, and I know there's some work going on at the moment. There may be some further adjustment around some of those projects.
Yeah, most likely. Yep. Yeah.
Hey, I'm happy to move this. Oh, Yanni. You'll second it that way.
Happy to second
Yep.
it. Yeah,
So-
I just had questions in regards to the craft projects, and I know that they're on the watch list as well. But how do we get visibility within the specific craft projects that are being that work is progressing? I mean, do you want watch list questions now or?
Yeah. I'm happy.
Okay,
I-
so
I
the
can-
Linwood Craft.
I can answer that one. As written at the top of the CREF report, detailed reports are going back through each of the community boards over March. Unfortunately, for one community board, the staff couldn't get in until later in April. But all of that information will be provided quarterly to community boards as listed in the report,
So you must have
and it's due to happen now.
you must have in the budget in the program that all the IT programs that we've got to measure performance. You must be able to track how much spend is happening against each project and what stage each project's at.
Yep.
So I'm sort of puzzled why that needs to wait for a community board briefing rather than be provided to the local councillor. Is there like any way that we can get that information ahead of waiting for another 2 months?
Well, it's not 2
The
months.
staff will
We're at
provide
the
it
end
to
of
the
March
community board as
Of April.
agreed through the community board reports that are prepared for the community board briefings.
now. Yeah. I get your point, Yanni, but what I'd quite like to do is just can we let the community board briefings run, and then maybe you and I have a chat after that if there's more information you need, and we can sit with Lynette and Lynn or Mary or Leah or whoever to sort that out.
But surely this is the Finance Committee of Council, and we
Yes.
should have a right to know
Yanni.
how much money has been expended
Yep.
against that budget.
And you will obviously just realise we've just been through a financial report. We've had Russell at the table to discuss that. We've also had a capital report being gone through now. But ultimately, you've got an answer, which is they're going to the community boards in this month. Your community
It's not
board,
this month, it's the end of April.
Yanni, if you let me finish, that would be really helpful. As Lynette mentioned, if you were listening, your community board is next month because they cannot schedule it this month. So what I would like to do is let them do that, and then we will work out a solution if you're not happy after that. So have you got a different question?
What confidence can I have that the craft timelines that the community has been given are being met?
Nothing has been flagged that there has been any changes, or have I misread the report? No. Right. Anything else?
In terms of the surf projects and the Streets for People, do you think it'd be useful to have a watch list on those as well? So that given that we've
asked for that, so that will be coming
have you?
through. Yep.
Yeah,
It'll
those
be coming
projects
through
just
once it's
being
all
set
set
up.
up.
So there's not much to.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the
Got
individual?
that on. We've got a note of that to include those details, probably similar to the craft watch list, be at a program level. Yeah.
Is it possible to get it at a project level rather than at a program level?
I think what we've requested of Lynette, I know Dawn raised it straight after the meeting, was that we want some reporting back to council on a regular basis, given the risk associated with the funding and the deliverability. So can we just leave it with them to come back? And again, if you're not happy, actually that's a different way. If there's more information that can be provided that is useful to council, we will consider it then. So I'm really keen to keep this moving, Yanni, because we've got another item before 11, and then I've got externals coming in. So have you got anything different on anything
Just
else?
in regards to the cycleway along the Heathgate, so this is just on page, it's page 21, and just note, I mean, it's listed as, I think, green in the watch list, but the signs up say the work would be finished by the end of February, but those signs are still up and you're showing it's at 70%. Are you able just to give us a sense of what communication is going out if the project's still on tracking on time, and maybe if there's just a gap between communicating around where work is currently happening versus what the outcome's going to be?
All I can update you with is that it's continuing. If you want detailed questions, can you pop that through the office of the CE and I'll come back with detail. I'll get the project manager to give you a detailed response.
Right, but the best of our knowledge, that cycleway in terms of the overall project is still on track for 2025.
Yeah, and it's signalling a bring back on that one. If you read the graphs up ahead, that's a great example of a bring back one. It says to me it's progressing
Delivering ahead of time.
progressing well ahead
That's
of
been
the
asked
budget.
and answered, that's fine.
Yep.
Right, so that's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that. And it'd be good to get that tweak in the reporting. That'd be awesome. Okay, now, can I just ask, before we call the next paper, does anyone have, like, is it a, I mean, I know you're both, Pauline and Jake will be conflicted on it with OCHT. Does anyone have any, what I'm trying to get to is this going to take a long time? Because if it is, we'll stop now. But I doubt, given it's a continuation of a policy that we've previously agreed on, there's not going to be much that anyone's agitated about.
Happy to move.
Okay. Would someone like to, so, hello. So item 10, Melanie's happy to second it. Is there any questions to Gavin? No? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Excellent. Thank you, Gavin. It was a good report. Very good report. Okay, we're going to now take a 10-minute break. As luck would. How long will yours? Short and sweet. Okay. Well, do you want to do it? Tell you what, do it now. Yeah. And then we'll take a break, and then the others will come through. So welcome along. And we're in your hands.
Morena everyone, lovely to see you. For those of you I've yet to have the pleasure to meet, my name's Amy Carter. I'm the Chief Executive of the Christchurch Foundation. This is my colleague Tom Mills, who is our CFO. He actually works for KPMG, but we use their capacity because it's global and a nice big brand. So I thought it would be useful for him to come along today as well in case you had any questions. You all have seen Linda's report, I'm taking it. So we're getting very close to the end of our establishment phase, which was generously underwritten by the Christchurch City Council, so thank you for that. I don't know if any of you have got any questions around any of that information. I know we're new to a number of you. Well, that's easy. I thought there's just a couple of things I wanted to highlight, if that's okay. The first one is just to congratulate you on what a success story for the Christchurch, in particular the Christchurch City Council, the Christchurch Foundation is. We've already repaid you 90% of the operational establishment funding that you gave us through grants that have gone on back into the council's balance sheet. And the funding that you gave us was for the first 6 years of our life, and as we're an organisation that's looking forward 100 years' time, I'm pretty sure that we'll be a net contributor to council over time, which is a great success story for something that you established, so congratulations for that. What's more, we're world leading, we are a city brand building entity, and we're growing your connections globally every day to expatriates, global funders and foundations. We are advising the New York Community Trust on their strategy. That's a multi-billion-dollar fund. We're working with Tel Aviv, Vancouver, the London Emergencies Trust. We are at the front of the curve for philanthropy globally, and that's something that came out of this entity you should be proud of. What's more, we can now measure and report on our impact. So we've developed a world-leading framework with an expert, the impact report, which is on our website, and I'm more than willing to sit and have a cuppa with any of you and talk you through this, that actually allows us to measure our activity and the positive impact that that has on a day-to-day basis for our citizens. And each year that will grow in depth and will show more and more value, which is really exciting. So it was just short and sweet, really. Our story is one that came out of the rubble of the earthquakes and is now helping make our place better. And our strategy for the future will be sent to you all directly in the next few weeks. We've just gone through a strategic planning process. I just wanted to flag that our chair, Humphrey Ralston, will be standing down at our April board meeting as part of a planned refresh project for our leadership. And we'll be appointing a new chair at that time from the new trustees. The new trustees that have recently joined our board are Anake Goodall, Annabelle Holland. We've also got an IOD emerging director, Marianne Matai, has joined our board as well as Deputy Mayor Pauline Cotter as your representative on our board, and Chairman Peter Scott as the other representative to ensure that Greater Christchurch has a voice at that table. Any questions around any of that?
Great, thank you very much, Amy. And we've added in, the council wanted to add in a resolution to acknowledge Humphrey's service as well, so that'll be in the resolutions. In terms of questions, does anyone have any questions for Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the work that you've done. Just wanted to get my head around the comment you made around the money going back to the council projects. Are you able maybe just to give us a quick snapshot of what projects?
Vastly, the majority of that has been money towards the operational funding of Turanga through the partnership agreements that we signed when we established the organisation. So we had some funding agreements in place with Spark, South Base, and TSB, and that funding, some of that are under contracts for another 5 years, so by the completion of that. But also we've got donors that are already asking us to facilitate gifts. For example, we've got a small donor, the Canterbury Brewers Collective in Riverside Market. They have a karma cake every now and again, and $1 from every pint sold goes towards projects which we then use, and he's asked for those to facilitate the cleaning and upgrade of toilets in Magnet Bay and other bays around the peninsula. So that's just an example of how there's always little conversations going on.
Thanks.
We've also raised money for the Rickett and Bush Trust, and of course we help support Rod Donald Trust in its purchase of the 2 maonga on Banks Peninsula as well.
Yeah, good work on that. Just in terms of 3.6, in terms of the sponsorship funding for Tūranga for South Base and Spark has come to an end.
No.
No?
TSB, South Base and Spark has, yes.
Yeah, so what
TSB
happens,
continues for another 5 years.
So what happens there with things like naming rights and ongoing
It's up to
relationship?
the libraries team and the council. I mean, if you wanted to come to us and see if we had any donors that may be interested in that, we would be open to having those conversations.
Right.
Donor-led organisation.
Sure. So
We think of us as Tinder, where we match generosity to cool projects. That's the best way to describe it.
so that's on us now to work out what happens there.
But we're here to help. If you need some advice around that, we're happy to help.
Yeah, thank you.
You said you had connections around the world in different cities. Can you elaborate on this?
So we've set up a charitable entity in the United Kingdom. Its benefit is to benefit Greater Otatahi Christchurch as well. So we've already facilitated $480,000 back to the rebuild of the Christchurch Cathedral, for example. And our engagement program for this year kicks off next week with we're hosting an event with Alexandra Shackleton, who's Ernest Shackleton's granddaughter, talking about the links between our city as a bit of a fundraiser for a project that we're working on. We're working on a new initiative, which is through the Sister City Committee, which is a collaboration between ourselves and the Seattle Aquarium, which is to run a youth-initiated conservation program called Ocean Bridge, where we bring Indigenous people as well as youth together, empower them to make change and take action around climate, in particular ocean healthiness, and that allows us to talk to our expatriates there, and our intention is to register as a US charity as well, subject to funding, so that allows us to tax incentivise giving for expatriates back here. Yeah, it's a good job though.
With the cities, what cities are involved around the world?
Well, the Sister City Committee at the moment, so we're targeting particular areas where there's expatriate community of scale, obviously. So our outreach program is already live in London. We also run an annual event at the original Hagley House, which is where the Viscount of Cobham, Lord Christopher Littleton, his ancestors were some of the funders of the European settlement of Christchurch. So he's gifted us access to his home once a year to run a barbecue and a Kiwi backyard cricket game on the front lawn as a way to engage and continue to grow our strengths with those original European founders who have a bit of capital and are worth for us pursuing relationships with. And we've got live engagement programs in Seattle because it's our sister city and that's the beachhead into North America, but we've already got donors in Vancouver, San Fran, LA and New York, so we're looking to push into there. And we're just working on our eastern seaboard of Australia strategy as well.
Cool. And I heard Vancouver and
So Tyler,
Tel Aviv.
it's I wonder whether you two are better to have an offline chat about a lot of
Yeah,
this,
love to. Yeah.
which I think would be really useful because it may be something you can get involved in.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Come and have a cup of tea. I'd love to have a chat.
And on that note, I reckon Tyler will move this, and noting, obviously acknowledging Humphrey's role as well.
Thank you.
And Mark's happy to second it. Any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much for coming in.
No
That's
worries,
great.
thank you.
Cheers. Okay, we'll stop for 10 minutes now for a break, and then we'll be up with you guys. Cheers.
Meeting today. I understand you've got a presentation. Yeah, we'll let you start.
Kia ora, kia ora koutou katoa. Thanks very much for the chance for us to talk to you about Venues Otatahi's 22-23 quarter 2 performance. We're going to do this by having Caroline talk through with you the main elements of the in the presentation, and then we'll open it for questions for anyone to ask further matters which Caroline and Dale will deal with. But thanks very much for the opportunity to do this. It's important for us to tell you where we're at.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming.
Lovely, thanks. Katoa, lovely to see you all again. So look, you've obviously read our report, and it always feels when we get here, it's quite retrospective. So our presentation talks a little bit about some of those highlights of the second quarter, and probably a little bit more about the second half, but also looking a little bit forward into the last 2 quarters of the financial year. So just to kick off, looking back at Q1 and Q2, 17 major events delivered. So we have a target in our statement of intent to attract and deliver 14. So we're already surpassed that target, which is awesome at the halfway point of the year. So some of those highlights, 660, we had All Blacks, Black Ferns, the Wiggles, which I'm sure you all enjoyed. The Colours, Fast 5 netball series, which was awesome. So just some real genuine highlights. And again, not to labour the point of the last couple of years, but to see this activity back, to see our community coming together and really enjoying these events is just a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. And the demand is there and the content is there. Looking forward, and some of this is sort of looking forward and looking back given where we are in the year, but Jimmy Carr in January, we've got Black Caps Sri Lanka Test, and we've got the ODI next week. Dave Chappelle, Michael McIntyre was last night, which was brilliant. Yeah, it was brilliant.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. The Black Clash, obviously, and we're really looking forward to Cirque du Soleil on ice in June. Some more shows got released yesterday, given there's a really good uptake on ticket sales. So the forecast looks really good. Now, obviously, we're mindful that, you know, we're in a recessionary environment and the discretionary dollar could come under a bit of pressure. But at the minute, it feels like after the last couple of years when those experiences were taken away from us so quickly and without any warning, the demand is still there to spend your discretionary dollar on experience versus perhaps a more material item. So for us and for the city, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So again, just looking at some other highlights around event attraction. So we have a forecast in our SOI to host around 400,000 guests in the venues per year. Now, at the end of this half year, we are at 327,000. But year to date, we're actually already now surpassed that 400. So we're looking more like around 600,000, which again, just amazing, really, given what's happened over the last couple of years. We budgeted 305 events. We're looking to deliver 396. And at the halfway point of the year, events across the venue portfolio have delivered an estimated 14.5 million of economic impact. Now, obviously, with some of those major events in January, February, and looking forward to the end of the year, we're on track to surpass an estimated 30 million of estimated economic impact in this financial year. Supporting local. So this won't be a surprise to you, but it's great just to see everything still on track. So in the first half of the year, we procured 79% of our food and beverage from Canterbury, and the remainder predominantly from the South and North Island. Again, not to go back to prior to April 2020, but that's a massive shift. Again, you know, we're yet to see any impacts. We were worried a little bit about whether there might be impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle on maybe some diversion of Canterbury produce to the north and putting a bit of pressure. We're not seeing that yet. Whether we will is a watching brief. But what we're also finding, we are finding that food costs are going up, but we think we're less exposed given how we're procuring locally around transport and shipping particularly. So, you know, I think we're well positioned to weather that storm. And so what that translates to year to date, well, as at the end of December, is just over 900,000 of direct contribution to local suppliers and producers. And that means that we are well on track to what we had targeted for the financial year, of that being around 1.7. As of the end of February, that's already at 1.3. So again, we're tracking really, really well, and seeing that those choices that we're making around supporting local is having a direct impact for local producers and suppliers. Community events. So to date, to the end of December, we have hosted 40 events that have attracted a community discount. That meets already our year-end target. And so obviously we're well on track to surpass that, and to a value of around 110,000 in community discount. So again, we'll continue to support those community events as much as we can, and expect obviously those numbers to well and truly increase. A couple of highlights around sustainability and health, safety and wellbeing, two strategic priorities for Venues Ōtautahi. So we have a target, same as council obviously, for carbon neutrality by 2030. We have partnered with Toitu on their accreditation program, so working towards that, and also have commenced our planning to be a B Corp, so getting that accreditation as well. We have a new waste management partnership, and we'll be trialling some land diversion, some sorting at the Crusaders match on Friday in support of their sustainability goals as well, so in partnership with the Crusaders, and are hoping to obviously roll that out for all of the venues. And we've also recently partnered with a external consultancy just to help us a little bit with our sustainability strategy and roadmap, so we can take that onwards and deliver against that. In the last half of last year, we also engaged a review of our health and safety management system, which was a really valuable process, and we've accepted all of the recommendations there and progressed all of those. And so really looking forward, focused on continuous improvement, as well as having a genuine and wholehearted focus on the management of critical risk. And Te Kaha. So Venues Ōtautahi have continued our intensive engagement around design, so obviously getting to the pointy end there. So we've moved through developed into detailed design, and have continued to reconcile all of those design decisions back to those strategic design fundamentals. So sustainability, accessibility and inclusivity, operational functionality, commercial viability, multi-use. And so making sure that all of the decisions that we make along that path reconcile to those, because that underpins the investment case and the ability to deliver against that. And also working through where there is a capital versus whole of life potential trade-off. Obviously these are legacy decisions for council and for us, and so it's important that we work through those with the Te Kaha project delivery team and the contractor. Communications, so you would have noted yesterday in the Te Kaha presentation, we are creating a venue comm strategy and a project comm strategy. For venue communications, that's around genuine community engagement with Te Kaha. We want to start telling the story of Te Kaha, start bringing the venue to life, and that's what will underpin our communication strategy, but also will underpin our commercial strategy. And on that, obviously with confidence around the project going forward, we have the brand and narrative have been created. We have undertaken phase 1 of a 2-phase commercial strategy. So phase 1 is around the identification and valuation of all of the commercial assets, and that has been concluded. And then the next phase is obviously the development and execution of the commercial strategy, which we intend to kick off, or the development is now, but the execution from May. And then event attraction, which is already in our minds, but in real terms is probably something we start in earnest mid to late this year. business events have a longer lead time, but some of the entertainment events are a little bit shorter lead time. Financial performance. So again, this is going to be, touch wood, our first year of full year of trading since FY 18-19, since before the town hall opened. So thank you, COVID, for that. So we are on track to complete this year, which is a delight. We have a $906,000 positive revenue variance against budget to the end of 2022. And an $882,000 positive variance against EBITDA. At the minute, we're already incurring some Te Kaha pre-opening costs, so thinking about the development and execution of commercial strategies, etc., and we're managing that within our cash flows and operating expenses. So obviously, it's a really strong start to the financial year, which stands us in really good stead for what could be challenging economic conditions. We're already there, but we're preparing for what will be increasingly challenging conditions. But the positive and solid start of the year, it stands us in good stead. And as I've said, increases in food costs, utilities, insurance, and whether that pressure on the discretionary dollar becomes a real thing are certainly in our mind. And just a bit of a recap on how our operating support is prioritised. So we have $4.8 million of annual fixed asset management and maintenance costs. And those are really fixed costs. They are about maintaining the assets to ensure that they're safe, compliant and operationally functional. So from council, we get $4 million in total. $1 million of that is around debt servicing. And $3 million goes towards those fixed asset maintenance and management costs. So that covers 68% of those expenses, and the remainder is offset by our operating revenues. So looking forward to next year, we will have 5.4, so you do see that increasing. That's around predominantly things like insurance and utilities going up. And so our current funding will contribute 57%, so we'll offset the remaining 2.4 through our own operating revenues. And just of note on the debt servicing, so obviously at the minute it's 1 million, but that will reduce to 200,000 in 23-24 and to nil in 24-25. So that'll bring that total operating and debt servicing support from 4 to 3. Thought I'd finished. And just a couple of highlights. These aren't captured in the quarter, but I just wanted to flag them because it's a wonderful opportunity to do so. So we had the Cyclone Gabriel support concert at Ōtautahi for Aotearoa at the Town Hall, and we donated the venue rental. The event sold out in 6 hours and raised over $200,000 for cyclone relief efforts. So that was a wonderful collaboration with Eccles, and obviously a lot of those entertainers were here for Electric Ave. So it was brilliant and it was wonderful to be able to do it. And then Sail GP, thankfully not today or yesterday, but what an amazing event. And such credit to Council and Christchurch NZ for collaboratively getting that event to the city. It was absolutely amazing, and we were delighted to be able to provide all the culinary services for the event. And what we did there was bring together a lot of local chefs and local producers and actually do it in a collaborative way. So through Venues Ōtautahi, it was just a wonderful thing to be part of and hopefully be part of again, but it really was just a special event. So just wanted to highlight that. And that brings us to the end. So thank you. And any questions?
You normally sing this.
Do you know what? It could be a song.
Thank you so much for that. You always bring such a professional and positive presentation to us, so thank you for that. I guess we might have time for maybe one question. Does anyone have anything? Pauline?
Well, mine's not a question. I just wanted to comment. First of all, it was nice to see you in flat shoes on Saturday.
It was undulating
people
ground.
pointed it out. But the food there was cutting edge. It was like... who are those people that do those funny science ones, you know? But it was like that. You didn't know what things were, and And if I thought, oh, I don't know, I don't think I'll try that. Well, don't knock it till you've tried it. So it was compulsory to try everything, and full of surprises. I can't speak highly enough of it. Just fantastic. Awesome. And that fundraising concert, putting that together at such short notice and having such a successful event, I think that just shows that you are doing such a good job, and you're right all over it. So well done.
Oh, thank you. Actually, the food there, it was a lot of it foraged from around the peninsula, and obviously all the seafood from, on the peninsula as well. So it was a wonderful story actually to be able to tell as well. So
right, Aaron.
Yeah, so on the success of your local procurement for your food and beverage, huge applause, it's great. To take it a step further, have you considered having food and beverage ambassadors at events? Like I've had the pleasure of working at a lot of major venues around the country. No one does it yet, but you guys could be the first, where someone comes out and tells the story of the food they're about to experience and why they're experiencing and what it is, and the same with the beverage as well, and kind of, because it's a great story, and as part of an evening taking the people on the journey, I think would be impressive, and you guys would be the first to do it. It's one of those things I think that's missing in the experience at most venues around the country, but when you do hear a chef, and for those here that went to the one, the Antarctic thing they did years ago, it was a bit of I don't think it went that well in the end, but they did the dome, and the chefs come out and explained what they did with each dish. That was really impressive, and having that, I think, would be a next level for that great story that you've got.
Yeah, I really love that idea. I think also something that we've just released actually into the market is we're organising our own Venues Otatahi midwinter event at the arena, which is a celebration of all local food and beverage. So that'll champion all of our local partners and suppliers in an event at the arena with music and street art, and it's all coming together really nicely. But I think that's a nice thing to do, to be able to build the story of our food into the experience.
Good idea.
So
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you. Sam's indicated he'll move the report, and Phil's indicated he'll second. I mean, the mayor. Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in.
So we'll move on to...
And we'll move on to item...
Gil, do you want to stay for this one?
For item 15.
So we're going to move to 15. Yeah, we'll do that, because we might move your one till after... Because CCHR on a tight time frame, aren't they? Don't they have investor ratios? Yeah, so we might move you afterwards, if that's all right. So we'll go to 15 now.
So appointment of elected members to boards of CNZ, VO and Civic Building. Did you want...
Okay. So
did you want to speak to this at all, Gail, or we just move into...
Yes, I will. Look, thanks very much. First of all, it's a different me this time. First of all, let me apologise. Therese has just let us know that she was going to be here for this, but she's unwell. So here I am. You've got the paper, and this is about the recommendation for councillor appointments to 3 entities: Civic Building, Christchurch NZ, and Venues Otatahi. We had a small panel, which was Therese, the Mayor, and myself, that interviewed the councillor candidates and have come forward with a recommendation which you have got in this paper. I'm not going to go through that in detail, but the recommendation is that for Civic Building Limited, James Goff and Sam McDonald are appointed, and Jake McClellan. For Christchurch NZ, Victoria Henstock and Jake McClellan. And for Venues Otatahi, Tim Scandrett and Kelly Barber. Now, I'm not sure how you want to deal with that in terms of the council discussion and resolution, but in terms of the recommendation of that appointments committee that you formed, that's what the recommendation across those 3 entities is.
Great. I think we're going to questions, if anyone's got any questions. Yanni?
Sort of a high-level question, but I thought when we discussed the appointment to the Civic Building Limited, that was one where we thought actually having some independent directors might be useful, given the significance of that. Has that been considered?
No, we haven't. Currently, it doesn't. It is, but we can look into that and give advice on that if you would like us to. But I don't recall that being requested of us. Sorry, and if I have, I've missed it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, Sarah? Move on, sorry. Sarah?
Thanks for that. Hey, so I'm just wondering, the council's been incredibly direct with CCHL when it comes to appointments in making sure that diversity in all its forms is being taken into account with appointments. And I'm wondering if there was that criteria given to the small appointments panel by council for the appointments, these ones.
It certainly was something that the appointments panel considered and considered carefully. In some sense, we were bounded by the fact that councillors were given the opportunity to express the boards they would like to go on across those three that we're talking about now. So we were limited to that group, and then we had to try and think about diversity of, I'll call it diversity of thought, diversity of approach, but also looking at the balance and the criteria that each of those entities had for their board appointments, trying to make sure we got the best people on those boards to carry out the function of governance in those entities. But diversity was something we certainly considered, and I guess the appointments committee believes that they tried to meld that in with getting the best appointments for each entity.
Okay, is that answered? Yep. Any other questions from anybody? Right, have we got a mover?
So we're going to do these separately, and the reason we're doing them separately, because obviously if you are being recommended, you can't vote for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Okay, Celeste. We'll go back into questions.
Are we still doing? I thought we agreed that was a 6-year term limit. Is that not the practice anymore? And was that?
Yeah. So what? So that is the policy that you've passed. That it was. But remember, we did say if there is a valid reason that they can be considered longer. So that was something that you considered. So did you want to comment on that? Because the two people that would have been affected would be Tim Scandrett on venues and James on civic building.
Yes. Let me deal with the one that I'm most familiar with, which is Venues Otatahi. We've got a relatively new board on Venues Otatahi because in a sense it's only come out of its chrysalis in the last year or so. And we were very conscious about having a person there that had institutional knowledge and also had an understanding of the industry. That was going to be really important to us. So what we did with Venues Otatahi, we did, in the case of Tim, think that was important, and that's why his recommendation is there. And we balanced that about getting some new and fresh blood in. And I'm sure these people don't mind me talking about them this way. And that's why Kelly we felt important to come on at that stage. So we got that balance of knowledge, history, if you like, also understanding the industry together with new face, new blood. So we certainly did think about that in the case of Venues Otatahi. I guess pretty much the same really for civic building. We know that there's some interesting negotiations, if I can call it that, going on there around civic building at the moment, and there always will be. So some knowledge of the past was important, and that's why James was there. We also felt it was important to get new blood on that, and Jake had put his hand up as being interested in that role, and we felt that bringing that new blood in was important, and that was an interesting and appropriate balance to get.
So in regards to new blood for the civic building, there were no other applicants that were able to sort of come on board that might offer. I think only 3 or
We felt that I could probably go back and check that. Can't remember offhand. I think that's right. There were no others. There were no others, and we felt whilst we were looking initially at 2, we felt bringing the third one in with Jake bringing that new blood in was really important, and that's why I got to that, Celeste.
And final question, have we sort of, in terms of the appointment process, and you can probably speak to this, one of the considerations is of course making sure that there is sort of a balanced workload across you know, our different entities and making sure that some individuals aren't overloaded. Was that taken into consideration?
And that was particularly, I remember, in respect, well, in fact for all of them, but particularly I remember that we had that discussion in relation to civic building. I think I remember specifically asking Jake that question, how did he feel about the extra load that might put on him? And he was comfortable with that. And I think we explored that with everyone that we talked to about their feeling of knowing that how busy they are around the council table, taking on these additional roles. And so we were very conscious of that and trying to get a balance. But also to introduce new blood. We thought that was really important. Otherwise it tends to be same old all the time.
Yep. Thank you.
Any further questions? Going once, going twice. Okay. We need a mover and seconder for each motion. So for 1A, Councillor Henstock and McClellan to Christchurch NZ Holdings. I have a mover for that. Aaron? And Mark? And do I vote on that? We do vote on that now and then move through? Okay. All those in favour say aye. Against? And abstentions?
Abstaining.
And I'll abstain as well. So for maybe, do we want a division for that or do we want hands up?
Jay, will you watch it?
I'll have a division because it's easier.
Are you abstaining? And 3 abstentions.
Myself and was it 5? Can we do a division?
Just a division.
It'd just be easier.
Just the first one.
The first one.
So, Henstock
Excuse
and
me,
Talon can't
Chair.
vote. Are we going?
Melanie, I've got just a process question. There's a whole lot of abstentions and there was no debate, so I'm a little confused, and I'm picking the public will be even more confused.
That was, well, did anyone want to debate? Do we want the movers and seconders for all of them before we go into debate? I think might be the wisest way to do this.
Which we've done.
Thank you.
Because didn't we have Aaron and...
No, but we need, do you want Aaron and, are you happy to both to move a second each motion?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, all right, cool.
So then debate, I guess, on...
Yeah, anyone want to debate? So, Yanni?
It's abstaining because I was involved in the process, and I just don't think it's right that people involved in the process should participate in the final outcome. So it's no criticism of anyone that's been put forward, but I just personally don't think that I should participate.
Anyone else want to debate?
Congratulations to Victoria and Jake if this goes through. I think, you know, 2 really good additions to Christchurch NZ, and I think it's a really balance of council, which is ultimately what the panel have achieved, and 2 high quality candidates. So thank you for putting your hands up. You're doing it for free, so it's you know, I mean, good on you for doing it.
You wanted to, I'll go before you. I just wanted to say that I'll be abstaining as well, mainly on breaking our policy, because we were advised quite clearly to have 6 years, 2 terms, and that came from outside the council. There was information provided to us at that time. So on that principle, and I like to stick to my principles, I will have to abstain. So, Aaron, from A, B and C.
A doesn't apply, it's only B and C.
I'm still going to abstain from the lot. So, Aaron.
Like Sam, I'd like to thank everyone for putting their hands up to be volunteers on these organisations. But the irony's not lost on me when 3 people apply for 3 roles when they're volunteer roles. I mean, it is extra work, so I do thank the ones that put their hand up and do the extra work. I have no problem with people doing more than 6 years as well. I'd just like to say that I think Tim's brought a real balance to the VO board over the years, and a conduit between the council table, and because he has often spoke up even when he couldn't vote on stuff that he knew that was happening, so he'd keep us well informed, and he has an experience in that industry that goes back many years than he even looks. So it is good to have that go onto the board. So there is some talented people at this table, and I don't know that they all put their hands up when they volunteer roles. So I'll leave it at that.
Right, sorry, because Aaron moved it, he's the final one, sorry about that.
Yeah, we do.
So, we've got same mover and seconder for all of it. So, and we've had debate. So, now we'll go into a division, I guess, for the whole lot. But we'll have to do that for each one, yeah.
Each
Vote
one.
is separate for each one. So we're going to be voting on A for Christchurch Ensign Holdings, Councillor Henstock and McClellan.
Okay, so for the first one, the Mayor.
Aye.
Councillor Cotter. Voting on the first one.
I didn't hear my name, did you say?
Yeah.
Aye.
Councillor Barber. Yes. Councillor Coker, abstained.
Abstain.
Councillor Donovan, abstained. Councillor Fields. Yes. Councillor Goff.
Yes.
Councillor Harrison Hunt. The first
one. Yeah.
Councillor Henstock.
No, she can't vote.
Oh, back to the table, sorry. Yep. Councillor Johansson. Councillor Kean. Yes. Councillor McDonald.
Yes.
Who is he? Councillor McClellan. Abstained, sitting back. Sorry, sitting back. Councillor Peters. Yes. Councillor Scandrett.
Aye.
Councillor Templeton. Abstained. Is that correct, Sarah?
Abstain. What about Councillor Moore?
He's not here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 4, and we have 1, 2, and we have several abstentions, so that's carried.
Congratulations.
Second one.
Yep, no, second one. So we're on to, B, sorry. I'm not used to chairing. So, second one, Councillor Scandrett and Councillor Barber to venues Otatahi. We've got our same mover and seconder again. Do we want a division this time? Yep, same. So Scandrett and Barber will be stepping back.
Yep. Okay, the Mayor.
Aye.
Yes. Councillor Connor. Aye. Councillor Coker.
Abstention.
Abstaining. Councillor Donovan. Councillor Goff.
Yes.
Councillor Harrison Hunt. I'll come to you. Abstain. Councillor Field, sorry. Yes. Councillor Henstock.
Yes.
Councillor Kean.
Yes.
Councillor Johansson. Councillor McDonald.
Yes.
Councillor McClellan.
Yes.
Councillor Moore is not here. Councillor Peters. Councillor Templeton. Abstain.
Yeah, she's not here.
That's passed.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4, and
Abstaining.
and that's carried.
Great, carried, yeah. And then we're on to C, which is Civic Building Limited. Same mover and seconder, and sorry, David, you have to get up.
Stepping down is standing back from the table is
Goff, McDonald, and McClellan.
Goff, McDonald, and who was the third one?
Jake.
And Jake. The Mayor.
Aye.
Deputy Cotter. Aye. Councillor Barber. Yes. Councillor Coker. Abstain. Councillor Donovan. Abstain. Councillor Fields. Abstain. Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Yes.
Councillor Henstock.
Yes.
Councillor Johansson. Councillor Kean.
Yes.
Councillor Moore is not here. Councillor Peters? Councillor Scandrett?
Aye.
Councillor Templeton abstaining. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 abstentions and 1. So that's carried.
Carried. Great. Okay, thanks everyone. Right, we will now move on to thanks, Gil. We'll move on to item 14 now. So CCHL half-year report, and we have Abby, Paul, and Tony presenting.
Congratulate Gil on his new appointment. It's been released.
I did on your behalf before.
It's been released to the stock exchange.
Yeah.
It's public.
Yeah, I told him before.
Welcome again, Abby, to the table. Might be less stressful this time.
Right.
Hi, Paul, and hi, Tony. So, come to do the half-year report and financial statements. Have you got a presentation you'd like to?
We have, so thank you for having us back. I'll just briefly speak and then turn the floor over to Paul and Tony. We're obviously here to present our interim report. That's for the period up to the end of December, so it's a fair way back now, and unfortunately kind of prior to my time with CCHL, but I'm capably accompanied by Tony and Paul, who have all of the answers to any questions that you might have. So I'm going to hand over to them, and Tony has a presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. So I've got a presentation here. If we can flick to the first slide, please. So just to introduce, the group profit for the half year was 55.3 million, up from 36.4 in the prior comparative period. Parent profit was 33.3 million, up from 29.2. Just for this NPAT history slide, shows the history of results for the past 5 half years to December. You can see the impact of border closures and lockdowns on the airport in FY21 and 22, and with a flow-on impact on the group. And you can see the recovery in FY23, but not yet back to pre-pandemic levels. Orion has been consistently tracking down due to the impact of the default price path requirements on revenue, and a further decline in the current half year due to higher interest and operating costs, along with higher depreciation off the back of the revaluation of the electricity network in FY22. You can also see the impact of the Spencer Henshaw acquisition on City Care in the current half year, and growth across the reporting periods in Enable and the Port. If we switch to the next slide, please. As seen by the graph on the previous slide, the airport is well on the way to recovery. Passengers for the half year returned closer to pre-pandemic levels, 92% for domestic passengers and 82% at a total level. City Care has obviously acquired Spencer Henshaw on the 2nd of September 22, which delivered above budget performance in the period to December 22. Eco Central's newly upgraded EcoSort recycling plant was commissioned in December 22, and those of you who are joining next week's Investor Roadshow may get to see it firsthand. All CCHL Group direct employees are paid at or above the living wage. The group is making good progress towards remunerating ongoing contractors at the living wage we're not already paid. CCHL has matured further along its integrated reporting journey. The draft SOI due to Council on 30 March is being restructured to better align to annual and integrated report formats. And group greenhouse gas quarterly emissions were first reported to the CCHL board for the quarter ended September 22 and will continue to be reported on a quarterly basis. Note that the first publicly available greenhouse gas reporting will be for FY24 in compliance with External Reporting Board climate relating disclosure requirements. In terms of key challenges, current and going forward, macroeconomic factors continue to impact the group, particularly high inflation, high interest rates and resource constraints. The impact of the Commerce Commission's default price path requirements on Orion's revenue, noting that after the end of this 5-year DPP period, there will be a wash-up where Orion will essentially be able to claw back part of that. The potential, we're looking to understand the potential impact of Three Waters reform on CCHL, and subsidiary investment as requirements such as future proofing for anticipated future demand, such as increased electrification on Orion and ensuring subsidiaries remain competitive, such as enables fibre competing with 5G. That's it for the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Short and sweet. No, that was really good. Thank you. I was just wondering what you thought the Three Waters reform, how that would impact on CCHL.
So that's something that will be covered off on Friday, I believe. Is that right, Paul?
Well, also, what I can say in public is we've done a lot of work in trying to understand the impact of reform. We've made submissions to the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee considering these matters. The latest submission we made was a public submission which will get released in May when the Select Committee reports back. But we have developed a relatively deep understanding now of the potential impact. We're working constructively with the Department of Internal Affairs and National Transition Unit on trying to develop a better understanding on both sides of that potential impact.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to hearing more. Does anyone else have any questions? Yanni?
In our letter of expectation, we were quite clear around diversity of appointments and also of senior executive remuneration restraint. Are you able just to give us some sense of how you're tracking on that? I believe maybe the last time we heard from CCHL, the time before, I understood you were doing some sort of diversity report review, and I wondered if that had been complete or when that was likely to be presented, and also quite keen to understand, as I said, around what progress has been made in terms of senior executive remuneration restraint.
I can answer the piece about the remuneration restraint. So that's going to be reported, it's reported annually, so that will be available in the subsidiary annual reports, which will come out towards the end of the year.
Number of new CEOs appointed in the meantime. There's no sense that we can get around the trend or the high level.
Not public information, so they'll be reported as appropriate in annual reports. You're right, the letter of expectation is very clear in what you want to see. That is communicated to the subsidiaries. We expect the subsidiaries to respond to that in the draft SOI process, which you'll start to see the first versions of that from March the 30th. I am going to caveat by saying we're in a really tight labour market, and our subsidiaries need to be able to respond to those market conditions. So when that expectation was created, it was quite a different labour market, and it is going to be challenging to not necessarily meet restraint in terms of closing the gap in terms of percentage increases. So that could change, but if I just picked numbers, saw a 5% increase in average wages across the lower paid workers in our workforce and a 2% increase in senior management wages, in absolute terms, that gap would widen. But that is just the nature of the labour market at the moment. What we've asked for in our letter of expectations to the sub is that they demonstrate the medium-term commitment to pay restraint.
Right, thanks. I think that answers that. I'm happy to move. Second, Mark? All right. Is there any further questions or anything? No.
answer on the diversity review.
We can ask you to come and speak to us about that at a later point.
Yanni's talking about the subsidiaries, the director appointments on the subsidiaries diversity report that was done about, in fairness, Yanni's correct, it was raised about a year ago. I think you did it about a year or 18 months ago. So it's just whether, I don't think the council ever received that.
Okay, I'm happy to pick that up. I'm not sure it's there. We've certainly got reporting in the half-year report that indicates female directorship numbers, so that's seen a 2% increase.
Correct, yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, and we'll come back on the diversity.
I think Paul Monroe was here. He should know about it. Be aware of it.
I
I think they've done the work on the
Yanni,
gender.
they've said that they'll come
Yeah,
back.
so appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. We've got mover and seconder. So all those in favour say aye. Against. Abstentions carried. Great. Thank you for coming in. And have you got a rush to get out of here by 12:30? Is that right?
That's right. Steve does. Yeah.
But they were
We've got investor roadshows today for our bond issue.
Yeah. So we just got one paper that we're hoping to start, shouldn't take too long before we go into PX, because that way we don't have to come back and forth. So we're hoping that the next paper that Linda's doing shouldn't take very long.
Okay.
Is that all right? I'll go back and forth.
So we're going backwards. Item 12. So CCO half-year performance reports. Linda?
I was just going to suggest taking it as read, and if anybody wanted to raise any questions.
Great. Okay, Pauline?
Thanks, Highlander. I've just got one on 3.4 on page 146 about CBL. So with the repayment of the debt and equity principal with an unforecast transaction. So does, because I don't know about this board, do they have delegated authority to make those decisions, or are they supposed to come here?
No, they have the authority to make those.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yanni?
So I also had a question about CBL. Is there any update on the renegotiation? Do we have a time frame for when something will happen in terms of coming back to us around that issue?
That is something we just keep on working through, but we're not going to be discussing that in public. So we'll come back to council.
I just know there were comments in the media in October last year around it, and we haven't had any update since.
Yep, and we will read an update back to the council.
Oh,
right.
So I just got.
Pauline.
Sorry, I forgot. Also, in 3.14, is there any way we can keep an eye on that our GFA meeting reduction targets in the carbon reduction management plan? Is there any way we can keep an eye on that, because they're just saying that they haven't met their target and they're working on it?
Yeah, and they expect to make their target by the end of the year, but we certainly, we report quarterly to you on LGFA, so we can pick that up in the next
That'd be a
quarterly
standing
report.
item in there. That'd be good. Thanks, Linda. Cheers.
Okay, do I have a mover? Don't all rush at once. Oh,
Pauline.
Pauline and seconded Tim. Great. Any debate? Excellent. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions carried. Great. Great. So now we, what are we doing next? Resolution, to exclude the public. Mover, those two over there. All right, yes, and and Abby, Paul, and Tony be staying for this PX part
For the 19, paper 19.
for paper 19.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favour say aye. Against, abstentions carried. Great, thanks.
Like for 10, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.